Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am going to be talking about the future of Dungeons & Dragons, who the game belongs to, who's holding the game right now, and who the game should be given to, right? All right, so really working on not saying right. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay, so Dungeons & Dragons right now, I actually did a video a few videos back, and there's quite a few people who watched it. Thank you very much. That said, the monster manual should be for every player during every moment of every Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game. And what this was is this is an attempt from me to fix the Dungeons & Dragons 5e game within the game. Fix the game from within the game, right? Now, when I say fix, I mean take it from, so we have a problem and we have an opportunity. The problem is that in the 90s, there were about 10 million active Dungeons & Dragons players. Right now, there are about 2 million active Dungeons & Dragons players, about 20% of what we used to have. In my opinion, the correct amount of active Dungeons & Dragons players should be about 20 million in the United States, right? 10 times the number we have right now, and twice as much as we had in the 90s, okay? So when I say fix, I mean get the right-sized audience for Dungeons & Dragons. So right now, by and large, to me, this is the fight for the hearts and minds of millennials. We need to get millennials playing this game, and the reason why is millennials are the game's future. Guys like me are the game's past, right? Now, I have been incredibly blessed by Dungeons & Dragons, and I continue to be blessed by Dungeons & Dragons. But I don't want the game to be for me. I want the game to be for millennials. And the reason why is, in order to stay relevant, a game needs to be meeting the current crop of young people who have the possibility of playing it where they are. It needs to change so it can be accepted by them, right? And right now, Dungeons & Dragons is really structured the way it was structured in the 80s, right? So one of the things that I keep returning to that I'm going to talk about just a little bit is Mike Merle's accomplishment with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I think it's really important to understand what Mike Merle's did. I believe he accomplished something that was absolutely, amazing. So he healed the rift that Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition created, right? And the way he did this was he kept many of the game's traditions, right? Many of them that I don't like. He kept slow combat, round by round combat, right? He did some things to speed it up, but we're still at a point where 6 seconds of combat takes 3 to 30 minutes. We're still there, right? And so, he kept that tradition. He also kept the monster manual can't be seen by players. They did nothing to fix that, right? So he kept those traditions, right? And one of the reasons why is Mike Merles is a fan of the game and a fan of Gary Gygax. All this is sourced from Gary Gygax, the creator, right? So, but what did he break? He broke some traditions. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition has 3 major changes. 3 changes that did not exist in 3rd edition or 4th, that did not exist in 3rd edition, 2nd edition, or 1st edition, right? The first one is advantage, right? Advantage is huge. The idea of rolling 2 d20s, taking the higher, or taking the disadvantage, taking the lower. That is a fundamental, awesome change within the game. It made it got rid of, you get a +2 for this, and you get a +2 for that, right? And that was a huge change. It made the game more attractive. It made the game better, easier to understand. I think it shrank the book size a little bit. It got rid of reasons for a ton of useless splat books, right? All those kind of things, right? So that was a huge change. So 1, advantage. 2, bounded accuracy. Bounded accuracy has to do with numbers and the way the entire number structure for monsters, for XP, for all of it is actually constructed. I could explain bounded accuracy in more detail, but I really feel that bounded accuracy is just like DNA evidence in a court case, right? It's sound, people it's good, it's great that it's there, but nobody understands it, right? The people who understand it are real math geniuses, right? And I'm sure that there's going to be people who come along and say, oh, it's not that hard to understand, blah, blah, blah. But again, most of those people are innately understand math, right? Now, I'm not a math genius, but I can hold my own with math, and I understand what bounded accuracy is. I will explain. So bounded accuracy, very quickly, is you don't just keep leveling up the difficulty with levels. You set a difficulty, and that difficulty remains the same, whether it's a 10th level character trying to do that task or a 2nd level character trying to do that task. It was a fundamental, important change to the game, and it really made the game much better, and the math of the game is much more sound, but it is hard to understand. It's not intuitive, and that's okay. It was needed, and it was incredibly useful. The last one is mechanized fluff, right? So the background, he took the game from being about race and class to being about race, class, and background. And he said, if you write, essentially he said, we want to make your background story matter, and you're going to get real equipment for that, and you're going to get equipment you can use right in the game that will give you benefits to doing tasks, and we're going to give you skills. These are mechanical benefits that come from the fluff of your character. Mechanized fluff. There were 4 things he changed. The last was he absolutely crystal clarified the purpose of the game in 3 words. This was absolutely brilliant. Interaction, combat, exploration. That's what the game's about. The game is about 3 things: combat, interaction, exploration. Awesome, right? Also, one of the things that's really fascinating about him clarifying in 3 words is, if the game's about interaction, and the game is about exploration, and the game is about combat, why does combat take up 50 to 80% of every game session, right? And so that's a big question. That's one of the things we need to fix. That's why I'm really dead set to fix the game within the game, right? And the reason why is, if we fix Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition from within the game, 1, it will allow us to play lightning fast story. It will allow us to use Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition to tell lightning fast stories. Now, the reason why I want to fix 5th edition and not just play another system is Dungeons & Dragons is the standard bearer. Wherever Dungeons & Dragons goes, that's where the entire industry goes, right? The other reason why I want to fix Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition from within Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is that you need to we need to show Mike Morales or the next Mike Morales. This is what should be in 6th edition, and Dungeon World did that, I think, for Mike Morales. So there's a lot of Dungeon World in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So there's going to be a battle. I think that battle is happening right now, where so I did this. So the monster manual video, where it said every character should, every player should have the monster manual open and available and usable every moment of every Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game. Got a few comments. I took that content, that video content, and I wrote an article and I put it up on nerdarchy.com. That post, right? So it was a 1,200 word article. I got more responses on it than any article I've ever written for nerdarchy.com, and I've written over 50 articles for them, right? It had close to a dozen, it had between half a dozen and a dozen responses. That's not unusual for an article. The length of the responses and the passion within those responses was unusual. I wrote a 1,200 word article. There is a 1,200 word response among those responses. And then many of the other responses were 600, 400, 800 words long, right? They were articles within themselves. And there was a theme. Not a single one of those responses was, I agree with this stance. It was all game masters who come from the old school, who were saying, I like to have my players in the dark. I don't want them to know the monster manual. And multiple game masters, dungeon masters within that post said, hey, if I do what you're doing, I can have a player say, hey, this monster has 75 hit points, and this monster is vulnerable to cold damage. And now I know that if I hit him 3 more times, I'm going to take that monster down. And also, I can now rally my entire party. This is the player saying this. And we can strike him from this side and strike him from that side, and we can drop him on turn 4. And almost all these dungeon masters said, this is what I'm afraid of. This is the problem. And my eyes just opened up, and I was like, oh my goodness. The dream state of engaged players who know the monsters they're fighting, who have attack plans that span the entire party, that orchestrate unison attacks. This guy coming in from here, this guy coming in from here. Players knowing, I'm going to take this monster down in 3rd round, right? This is a dream come true for me, right? This is what stops a millennial from playing another round of Bejeweled on their phone while the game is going on. And if you're a game master, if you're a dungeon master, you may have, experienced this once or twice, and it does happen out there. If you have that book open, you get engaged players, right? It is absolutely harder as a dungeon master. You now have to, really be on your game, and it also takes away from you the ability to just add whatever you want to a monster on the fly. You have to play by the rules. You can't make a 75 hit point monster 125 hit points, right? And that's good, right? We are going to trade control. We're going to take control from the dungeon master and give a large portion of it over to the players. And we have to, because millennials are used to that. They play video games. They have almost 100% of control of what their character is doing, right? And so this was already failed once with 4th edition, so we have to do it right? But we cannot give up on giving Dungeons and Dragons to millennials. It must be placed in their hands, right? And we have to make the changes to the game that are necessary to do that, right? I love Dungeons and Dragons. It has served me well since 1982, right? Which means that, that's what, like 40, it's a long time, right? So 92, 2002, 2012, we're talking 35 years, right, that I've had the game. I don't want the game to stay awesome for me. I want the game to be awesome for the next generation. And I want them to play it for 35 years and then change the game again and hand it to the whatever the millennials are called then, right? And so it's really important that we change the game, we push the game, and we make it as accessible to millennials as possible. And so one of the things that I've been putting around in my head is, how do we stop this myopic focus on combat? It's okay to have a lot of combat in the game, but those combats can't extend for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of the game. That needs to end, right? Combats need to be 5 minutes to 10 minutes long. End of sentence, right? Never more than 10 minutes long, no matter how large, in my opinion. So, and I think we can get there. I think we can get there with the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition structured just like it is, right? And then that fix should stand to allow us to play lightning fast stories with 5th edition right now, and it should stand as a blinking arrow to where the game needs to go in 6th edition, which we are 3 to 5 years out from, right? Sorry about saying right. Working so hard to get rid of that. All right, and so that's my take on where we need to head for Dungeons and Dragons. I really appreciate your time, listening and watching. If you find this content engaging or useful or entertaining, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you.